Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 150 of Belonging. I just heard something drop from the ceiling. Now that we have the Matic, we can return to up high, and we can go to the mushroom area and try and plant the mushrooms and do all that stuff. So, we'll begin making our way back up there. Along with that, today I wanted to talk about, let's see, how do I want to start this? Let's start on something I'm excited about. I ordered a 3D printer. I'm very interested in 3D printing, and I really like the idea of like making games and stuff and doing stuff with miniatures and all that. And I don't know, I love that stuff, and it on some level it feels like a stupid purchase, judging from my dislike of consumerism. It's like, oh, really? I'm gonna spend a bunch of money on like a couple $100 on a 3D printer, and I'm just gonna make like plastic knickknacks, and they're just gonna, contribute to the entropy of the universe and pollution and just, I don't know. But on the other hand, I think there's like a way of when you can make things on your own that it's not being shipped around from like factories on the other side of the planet. And so you could make the argument that it's also greener, maybe, but also when it comes right down to it, the real reason I want it is just because I'm a stupid man child who wants to make toys. That's what it comes down to, right? I want to make toys, and I mean, I also like thought there's some cool ideas I had for building actual useful things that I wanted, but more than anything, I think most people could agree that right now 3D printers are for man children making toys. And one thing is that I kind of was interested in now if I'm getting a 3D printer, what kind of stuff do I want to make with it? And there are some like wargaming, and if you don't know, like wargaming is like miniature gaming where you have little miniature soldiers and armies that you can move around on a board and play against another person with their armies and stuff. And I've never done that, but I'm very interested in it. I like the idea. So I'm trying to learn about this stuff. And on some level, I've been very much sidetracked just by learning about the lore of like the most popular war game is called Warhammer 40,000. And I was just addicted to listening to addicted to listening to lore videos on Warhammer in the background as I'm doing my day to day, because it's a really big setting. It's it's in the future, the year 40,000, and there's aliens, and they, I guess, coined the term grimdark, so you can get the idea of what kind of setting it is, where it's just everything's bad all the time, and everything sucks, and everything's bloody and horrible, and it's kind of a rule of cool setting, which is again not generally what I like. I generally prefer consistency. I prefer stories that are written by like an individual with a vision, and I tend to be annoyed by any kind of inconsistency that gets caused by a large group of people who are just following the rule of cool, right? So this does not seem like the sort of thing I would like, but I have mixed feelings because there's a lot of really cool ideas in Warhammer, or at least there is one very specific cool idea that I really like, and that is the Chaos Gods of Warhammer. And the Chaos Gods come from this idea in Warhammer that in the far future, where there's like trillions of human beings, I don't know if you've ever heard of the idea of human beings like manifesting uh fictional things like Bigfoot. There's like, I think it's called a tulpa, this idea that if enough people believe in something, it could turn real. And obviously, I think that's bullshit, but it's a fun idea, right? Um, and in Warhammer, that's basically true. It just takes a lot of people. And it just so happens that in the future, where mankind is spread out across like a large, like millions of planets or whatever, I think they say about 1 million planets, there are enough human beings that it, tulpas can kind of form, and not just like tulpas that people believe in the sense of like they know about them, but tulpas in the sense of people's emotions on a subconscious level can form entities in this other plane of existence called the warp, which is sort of overlaid onto real space. And these entities take the form of the chaos gods, or at least the big entities do in Warhammer. And they're really interesting concepts. I think a lot of the times, anytime a piece of fiction tries to encapsulate a whole bunch of things into like almost like a system of elements, I'm very fascinated with that. For instance, Avatar: The Last Airbender seemed to try and encapsulate everything into 4 elements. All of like human nature and philosophy could be described by either an element or a combination of those elements and how they interacted or whatever. Whereas what I'm sort of seeing is that in Warhammer, they seem to be trying to do that with the 4 chaos gods, and sometimes the 5th chaos god, depending on who you ask and how you look at the series. That's the frustrating thing, again, is just that there's no vision, there's no real overarching, like, solid vision, so people just take the series to be whatever they want, so you gotta take literally everything with a grain of salt, right? But so I'll try and just get through it. So the 4 chaos gods and what they're supposed to represent in Warhammer. Start with Khorne, which is the one that I find the least interesting, but maybe that's because I understand the least. I don't know. Is like the god of like violence and everything, and fighting and stuff. All of the gods supposedly also have a positive spin on their perspective, and I guess Khorne is supposedly like the god of honor and or something, I guess. It's very I don't understand Khorne very well. The ones that I am far more interested in, maybe I'll talk about again about the other one I don't particularly find as interesting. Slanesh is the god of pleasure, is the one that most people talk about, but from my perspective, what I seem to be seeing is it's more about the god. Is it like a god of excess or always striving for more, or like excess in human experience, or not human experience, but mostly. It's hard to describe. And yeah, so Khorne and Slanesh feel the most boring to me. It doesn't feel like there's much to talk about with them. The other 2 main chaos gods that I'm far more interested in are Nergal and Zeach. And Nergal is like the god of decay and giving up and acceptance, whereas Zeach is the god of change, hope, and kind of not acceptance, I suppose. And I'm fascinated in those concepts because Zeach and Nergal seem to me to embody a lot of things that I've been in the past years or so, along with my longing playthrough. I've been thinking about what I see as a struggle between Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy, which I'm not a scholar here, but from my low amount of perspective on these things, Eastern philosophy seems to be about acceptance and letting things be and not trying too hard, whereas Western philosophy seems more about trying hard as an individual and like making your mark on the world and like change. And they both have their good points and their bad points. Like obviously if you take either philosophy to an extreme, you can have very bad things. And that's the idea of in Warhammer, everything is to a very negative extreme. And certainly the Chaos Gods, like Zeach being like god of hope, like in an extreme sense of like constant change and like human desire to overthrow each other and constantly come out on top, whereas Nergal is more of a god of acceptance and like coming to terms with your place in the world, even if that means like giving up hope when maybe if you just put in a little bit more effort, you could have come out to something that you would have seen as better. But the thing is, the gods don't necessarily embody any of these things, because depending on who the writer is of whatever particular book, they can just redefine these things as anything. So anybody could make any argument about these gods, and that is annoying to me. So it's hard to make any argument on any specifics about literally anything in Warhammer, because it could just get retconned and nobody gives that much of a shit. It's almost like, from what I've heard from listening to people talk about lore, canon is almost a dirty word to Warhammer fans. And it seems like, I don't know, that's frustrating to me, but it's like, how could you work in any other way in Warhammer? Because everything is so... Alright, so, my recording software crashed. And luckily I still have some of the last episode, right? And it's not like I really did much. It's not like you missed much. So I was just gonna dig this out so that I can then plant the pink mushroom, then the green mushroom, and then I'll be able to end this episode to wait for the mushroom to grow, and then I can go over top there, and I can get to the cliff. I just realized we're very close to the end of this. If it does kill you, we'll find out if the cliff kills you once we get over there. Anyway, what were we talking about before we cut off? It looked like kind of like I was talking about the Chaos Gods in Warhammer. There is a fifth Chaos God that I'm very interested in called Malice, who is probably not canon or whatever anymore, probably got retconned. Again, who cares, because none of that has any meaning at all in Warhammer. Malice is the god, from what I could tell, of just pure unadulterated hate. And a lot of people would compare Malice to Khorne, but from the little I've seen of Malice and Khorne, Malice seems way cooler and way more interesting to me. Whereas Khorne is like a god of just violence for the sake of violence, but like with the excuse of honor backing the violence. Like Malice is like just hate and resentment, and then violence is just how that hate and resentment is expressed. That's at least what I get out of it. Whereas like Khorne may not necessarily be as hateful. Khorne might be more righteous or feeling righteous, whereas like Malice doesn't just hate and resent you for a living. Malice hates and resents itself for a living. And just everything in this stupid gay earth. I don't know, that's a meme. This stupid gay earth. I'm pausing because I was just like, that's an old meme. Are gay people gonna be sad that I'm using the word gay as if it's a negative? Ah, fuck yourself. I'm gonna use it. Where was I? With Malice. I just think Malice is a really cool idea for a Chaos God. I prefer Malice to Khorne. Khorne has a place in the idea of like the representation of human arrogance and thinking that war is righteous and good, when in like just under the surface war is just death and horribleness. Whereas like Malice is just unabashedly, there is no trying to like say that you're righteous or anything. It's just hate. And it really reminds me of, minor spoils for My Hero Academia, the main villain, Shigaraki, is just... Shigaraki starts out as such a boring main villain in Hero Academia, and it's kind of by purpose. And for the longest time, I didn't really get it, and I didn't really care. Maybe get it's not the best word. I felt like I get it, it just didn't emotionally ring Shigaraki's character to me. But after seeing the anime rendition of his backstory, and I won't get into his backstory because I don't want to spoil it, besides the fact that obviously I feel like it has to do with just unabashed hate and resentment, seeing it in the anime, it really like suddenly emotionally connected with me, and it was like, oh, I get it. This, like, the way that the music comes in, the score, they use this like backwards sounding music. I've been really sort of getting into the use of backwards music in a song. There's a very specific sound that backwards makes that's just so interesting to me. That when I was reading about and listening to people talk about Malice, the Chaos God, it reminded me so much of Shigaraki, and I was just so interested. And it just reminds me of like school shooters and stuff. It's like the Malice is like the mentality of school shooters, and I just feel like, whereas a lot of people think that it's good that like Malice got like retconned out because they thought that Malice was just was already being upheld by Korn, I disagree. I think Korn has his own place in the lore. As much as I don't like Korn, maybe it'd be better if, in actuality, what I think they could do is just have Korn sort of actually take on some of those aspects of Malice. I think it'd be better if we had Malice like in the story, because I do think Malice is an individual character and like represents things that Korn does not. But like without that, it'd still be good to have some of those aspects that I feel like Malice takes on be used by Korn. Specifically, just that idea of like just characters who just, they hate and they're negative not for some cause or because of some righteous feeling or anything, but just because they've been just so broken down that they just hate and they want to take it out on others and just take it out on the universe and themselves. None of the other gods, in my opinion, really take that perspective. You could argue some of them do, but I disagree. You could argue maybe that Nergal takes on like that self-hatred, but he doesn't. Nergal is love in the face of the horror of the universe, whereas Malice is just complete hate and resentment towards the universe. You could argue, yeah, that Korn represents the things that Malice does, but he doesn't. Korn represents it's the self-righteousness in your hatred that Malice just doesn't have, from what I can tell from my hearing. But again, I haven't read any of these stories. I've just read snippets of lore that people have posted on the internet and then talked about in YouTube videos. So maybe I'm talking about out my ass about literally everything I've said in this video. I don't know. The one other thing that I kind of skimmed over that I talked more about in the part of this video that got corrupted was just the fact that, in the end, I'm not sure I'm ever going to actually play any of these war games, because when you look into the rules, they're all way complicated. Every individual miniature seems to have their own special rules that you gotta learn. They all interact in special ways, and they've got multiple combat steps, and it's so much, and all the miniatures cost so much. It's like, I can at least get past that part because of 3D printing, but it makes me wonder, how does anyone get into Warhammer, or any of these games for that matter, when there's such a high barrier to entry, you know what I mean? It's like, unless you get grandfathered in by like having an older brother or something who plays these games, how in the hell do you ever learn how to play this stuff? Okay, grow mushroom. Let's see if this is close enough. The perfect soil for mushrooms of all kinds. Well, anyway, I think that's enough talk about Warhammer. I'm going to end an episode there, and I'm going to wait for these mushrooms to grow. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for watching. Talk to you next time.